Now, Harry Belafonte, the singer and actor who smashed racial barriers in the US, has died at home in Manhattan. He was 96. One of the most successful African-American pop stars in history. He scored hits with Island in the Sun, Mary's Boy Child, and the UK #1 Deo. But arguably his greatest achievements were as a campaigner for black civil rights in the US. His spokesman said he died of congestive heart failure. Before we look back on Harry Belafonte's remarkable career and legacy, let's take a listen to one of his most iconic songs. This is Deo, otherwise known as the Banana Boat Song, taken from the 1956 album Calypso.
Work all night on a drink of rum. Daylight come and we want go home. Stack banana till the morning come. Daylight come and we want go home. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and we want go home. He said, come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and we want go home. Lift 6 and 7 and 8 and bunch. Daylight come and we want go home. We say 6 and 7 and 8 and bunch. Daylight come and we want go home. We said daylight come and we want go home. Daylight come and we want go home. Our beautiful boy.
Brilliant. That was Harry Belafonte performing in concert in Japan in 1960. Now, to look back at Harry Belafonte's career, we can speak to Arise correspondent Judita de Silva, who joins me live from London. Good to see you, Judita. So the great Harry Belafonte, who was at once a famous singer, actor and activist, passes on. Let's start with his singing and his acting. What a legacy.
It's an incredible legacy, but when you kind of look at his background and how he came up, he was born in Harlem, New York, then spent 8 years of his childhood in Jamaica, came from a very impoverished family. So he is the real American story. And also the pedigree of the kinds of people that were around when he was having his formative years. So before his release of his first album, he went to the American Negro Theater and used to attend plays with Sidney Poitier. That's what inspired him to pursue acting. To pay for acting, he used to sing pop and jazz songs at jazz clubs. And one of the times he sang, he said he got there and realized that the people backing him, one was Charlie Parker and the other was Miles Davis. And when he went to acting classes, his classmates were Marlon Brando and Tony Curtis and Walter Matthau. So just the environment he was in, it was a different time, a different breed of star. But like Sidney Poitier, he was one of those stars that realized that he shouldered more responsibility than his white counterparts, and he embraced that. It's not something he asked for, but as soon as he knew that he had the potential to be something greater and do more, he embraced it, because he said he learned that from his mother, who said, in the face of injustice, you should never be quiet about it. And he never was. So it's almost like, even when you look at the tributes pouring in from people, the praise for him is always synonymous with how he used his acting, how he used his music to teach people about who he was, but also challenge stereotypes. And that's just Harry Belafonte through and through.
And of course, beyond his civil rights activism, I mean, he was a great humanitarian. There was, of course, We Are the World, that 1985 sort of all-star musical collaboration that raised money for famine relief in Ethiopia. And I understand he provided the impetus for that.
Yes, he did. So this song that was written by Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, produced by Quincy Jones, never before, it was the first of what we now know is quite common to have superstars of the music industry come together for a charitable song. They started that, but they couldn't get people to jump on board until Harry Belafonte threw in his star power And he brought so many stars together from the music industry. And there was something famously written in the studio on the door that says, "Leave your egos at the door," and everyone did. That was down to the respect they had for him. They showed up because Harry Belafonte himself always showed up, even back to one of his idols, Martin Luther King. When he was put in Birmingham jail, he paid the money to bail him out. When one of the tributes came from Martin Luther King's daughter, where she posted a picture of him at Martin Luther King's funeral and said he supported in so many ways. And the babysitter who looked after them that night, he paid for. So he always showed up, and that's why people showed up for him as well.
And of course, you mentioned the fact that he was a great icon of the civil rights movement, standing shoulder to shoulder with people like Martin Luther King. And of course, much later, he worked very hard to end apartheid in South Africa.
Yes, he did. Again, it was the money he raised, the star power he lent to initiatives. He was very involved. He was a close friend of Nelson Mandela. He paid, I think he raised almost $60,000 towards the initiative. And fighting AIDS, fighting apartheid, it was something he always was part of. And it's kind of very few stars today are of the level of commitment that Harry Belafonte had. Like I said, he came from a different era, just like Sidney Poitier did, where he believed that what he represented was a depiction of what could be when you don't see boundaries of color lines. Even left-wing figures like Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro, he believed in the ideal of left-wing reform, but also nonviolent reform, like a tribute Christian Amanpour said. He was a pioneer of nonviolent activism because there's so much change you can bring about when you lead by example, and that's exactly what he did.
Okay, Judita, thank you very much indeed. Judita de Silva is Arise correspondent, and she was talking to me there from London about the life of Harry Belafonte, who has died in New York at the age of 96.